Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the EPN's Hear Us Roar Bioregional Restoration of Central Ohio's Ecological Systems. My name is Jeff Sharp, Director of the Ohio State School of Environment and Natural Resources, and I'm delighted to be here with you for such an exciting and interesting topic. On behalf of our regional partners in our school, I want to acknowledge that Central Ohio is the traditional homeland of the Shawnee Nation, Miami, Wyandotte, and other indigenous nations who have strong ties to these lands. Today, individuals from a broad range of indigenous backgrounds call Columbus and Central Ohio home. As a land-grant institution, we pay our respects to ancestors, elders, and relations past, present, and emerging. Today, we are excited to partner with Regional Ohio Action for Resilience and to host Dr. Daniel Christian Wahl, who is joining us from the island of Mallorca off the coast of Spain. Whichever time zone, hemisphere, or bioregion you are from, thank you for joining us today. Going into its 9th year, the Environmental Professionals Network partners with entities from across Ohio, the Great Lakes, and Ohio River Valley regions, and as we are seeing today, the world, to connect our community of natural resource advocates and environmental experts for learning, inspiration, and professional networking. I want to note that the graphic on the screen, our program imagery, was designed by Central Ohio resident Stephanie Hawk. Taking advice from our legendary local naturalist, Jim McCormick, Stephanie took hikes at special Ohio locations with unique ecological factors to take the photos displayed here. The locations captured here, starting in the top left corner, are of a hardwood forest in Deer Haven Park. In the top right corner, we see a photo of Lake Erie. In the bottom left corner, Stephanie used a photo of an oak savanna in the grasslands of Champaign County, a warm grass prairie at the iconic Granville Land Lab, a riverine habitat sourced from the Big Darby in the middle, and a wetland at Mentor Marsh in the bottom right corner. Thank you for this beautiful feature, Stephanie, and to Dwayne Gambilat for building these photos into today's program. Roar's Higher Education Collaborative, which you will learn more about later today, includes the following colleges and universities from across Central Ohio. These institutions are leveraging their collective buying power for renewable energy and food aggregation and collaborative curriculum programming focused on bioregional cooperation. Terry Hermsen, professor of English, creative writing, and environmental literature at Otterbein University, will be sharing about the inaugural Roar Academy in the second half of our program, and you will have the chance to meet faculty and students from these respective universities who are with us today. We are very excited to be partnering with these fellow institutions of higher education. Today's agenda is on the screen. I can assure you that the presentation, concepts, and content provided by Dr. Wahl will prompt many questions. As you can see, we have a series of breakout sessions to further explore key elements of his presentation, as well as for networking and information sharing. In his 2016 book, Designing Regenerative Cultures, Daniel advises his readers that questions, more than answers, are the pathway to collective wisdom. Following Daniel's presentation, we will offer some instructions for what to expect in these breakout conversations, which will be facilitated by professional experts in the respective fields and topic areas listed on the screen. We'll explore questions together about ecosystem restoration, bioregionalism, and what role that institutions for our higher education can play in supporting movements toward more regenerative cultures and enhancing our collective wisdom. I'm excited to be a participant in exploring these questions with you and Daniel Wahl today. I know we have a number of folks who have signed up for this program and are still logging on. As you are joining us, please review your name in the Zoom taskbar located on your screen. Check to see if your Zoom name is listed accurately on your screen. For those who are wondering, this event is set up so that your microphone and camera should be set as off. Though it can't hurt to double check that in the taskbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You're welcome to turn your video on because we love to see you, though please keep your audio muted while Daniel and other speakers are presenting. If the microphone icon in the bottom left corner has a red line through it, then you are muted. The same for the video icon next to it. A red line through it means that your video is off. After a year and a half of Zoom, I think we should all be sort of like very proficient at this, but if you are new to it all, we're happy to help move you along with your understanding. We are always trying different approaches to build community through our Zoom-based arrangements and excited for the opportunity for you to engage with one another virtually and directly later in this program. We encourage you to ask questions directly to Daniel and other speakers during this program using the chat function that is located in the Zoom taskbar at the bottom of your screen. Rather than sending questions to Daniel directly while he is speaking or to everyone at once, we request that you direct your questions specifically to Joe Campbell, who will be compiling questions for Daniel to review towards the second half of our program. If you have a specific question for a speaker, then please send it to Joe and type in the @ symbol followed by the speaker's first name alongside your question. If you need to troubleshoot technological or connection issues, then please send a direct message in the chat to our event hosts, Cecil and Joe. An extensive bio for Daniel is listed on the screen. I encourage you after our program to continue reading about Daniel's work, including his blog posts on Medium and various social media platforms. This program is being recorded and an edited version will be published on our EPN YouTube channel next week. Thank you, and it is a pleasure to now hand it over to Dr. Daniel Christian Wahl.
Well, thanks so much, Jeff. And what a wonderful introduction that you actually started by honoring the original custodians of the land that you honor. Well done. And also, you brought in the wider community of life of your bioregion, which also I feel very much already attuned with the deeper work of bioregionalism. I'm really glad that I have this opportunity to speak with you today about a subject that has been a passion of mine for almost 20 years. So just yesterday, in order to bring my bioregion into this conversation, because we're all place-based people, I gave a talk here on the island of Mallorca, which is in the center of the image, on the potential for Mallorca and the Balearic Islands to become a reference in bioregional regeneration, and particularly also the link between marine and terrestrial ecosystems restoration. So this is just to give you an idea that I'm not talking about this academically, I'm talking about this as a practitioner of trying to catalyze bioregional regeneration in my region. Oops, hold on, how do I move? Yeah, there we go. And I put this slide in to do exactly what Jeff has already done, to remind us that our species has been a primarily bioregional species for most of its history, and that our role has always been, as expressions of the ecosystems we inhabited, to be humble gardeners or custodians of those ecosystems, to nurture their ecological abundance along, to be even more productive so we could meet our needs in a regenerative way in those ecosystems. And it's only in relatively recent history that we took a detour away from that through agriculture and later through the discovery of fossil fuels. And again, a compatriot of your nation, Gary Snyder, in the first big American boom of bioregionalism, coined this wonderful term of re-inhabitation, of coming back home to a place and re-inhabiting place. And he said, in order to work bioregionally, we have to make ourselves common with the inhabitory people of this planet. And that means indigenous cultures, the people who've never left that deep connection with land and a worldview that seems foreign to us, but actually served us well throughout our history, which is that land does not belong to us, we belong to the land. And for me, bioregionalism is mainly about that. How do we come back into being custodians of the land? And in doing so, we can build human and planetary health. I wrote my 2006 PhD, which was examined by Professor David Orr, one of Ohio's great thinkers in environmental science. And really, I owe a deep debt of gratitude to David Orr's work for everything that I've done academically and then since. And the title of my PhD was Design for Human and Planetary Health. The reason why I'm bringing this up is that there's now, many years later, a 230 universities and research centers strong alliance called the Planetary Health Alliance that is trying to, from a health policy perspective, get people to understand that environmental health and ecosystems health and human health are just one continuum, and that we need to improve planetary health in order to have better population health. And this is all pre-COVID, and now we really have had a very strong experience of what happens when ecosystems deteriorate. And the reason I'm bringing it up is the people of the Planetary Health Alliance also agree that you cannot heal the planet on this abstract planetary massive scale. The only way that we can have healing influence on ecosystems and the systems we are expressions of is in place. And place is fractal. Yes, it's local, regional, national, and global at the same time. But really, the locus of focus for refitting humanity into the ecosystems that brought us forth is the bioregion. And that's a great academic alliance for those of you who are working with this to draw and strengthen this alliance between planetary health and bioregional work. They're already there, and they're potential partners in this work. The other partner I just wanted to highlight at the beginning is that the Capital Institute in New York, John Fullerton's work on regenerative economics, has also concluded that in order to implement a new type of economic system that is regenerative by design, it has to be focused on the bioregional scale. And the Capital Institute in New York incubated this network that I think is misnamed because it's called Regenerative Communities Network. To me, it should actually be called Regenerative Bioregional Economies Network, because it's mainly groups around the US and in other parts of the world that have come together to look at how do we enact and facilitate a new type of bioregional economy in a coming home, a re-inhabitation at the bioregional scale. And because I'm talking a lot about this word regenerative, I do think it helps to briefly flag up this continuum that is an evolution of a graphic that started with the work of Carol Sanford and Bill Reed in Regenesis Group, and then has been adapted by Ethan Rowland, and I've added a little bit more, but it's basically a work in progress that puts into one trajectory conventional business as usual, doing a little bit better green, getting to the point of not having any negative impact, sustainable, becoming restorative in the sense of doing more than just no damage, restoring ecosystems, restoring social systems. But then the big jump is that return to the indigenous worldview of that we have never been separate from nature, that we are actually biological beings. And as Janine Benyus so wonderfully put it, life creates conditions conducive to life. And our job is to create conditions conducive to life, to human life and non-human life in the bioregions that we depend on and that we inhabit. And really that is for me that step into working regeneratively, that we understand ourselves as part of an evolutionary process and understand life as a planetary process in which we can take a conscious role of being custodians and participate in it appropriately. In terms of the historic Western roots of bioregionalism that I also find very useful to come back to, the work of Sir Patrick Geddes at the turn of the last century in Scotland is really informative, because he was really the first who created this valley section, or the valley plan of civilization, as he called it, which says that really for humans to inhabit ecosystems, we have to plan our cities in the context of our regions, and we have to closely link cities with regions, the mountains all the way down to the sea, working on a watershed scale. And he was a real pioneer in how to bring this not just into academia, and how to bring academia back together again in terms of working very interdisciplinary already 120 years ago. But he also understood that civic participation was at the center of it. And there's this building in the center of this image, which is the Outlook Tower in the old town of Edinburgh, where he created an exhibition in which people could walk into the ground floor and they saw an exhibition of the world. And then they moved up and they saw Europe. And then they saw the UK. And then they saw Scotland. And then on the top floor, there was a camera obscura, which showed them the whole of Edinburgh City. And that kind of nested wholeness, that nested systems awareness is way ahead of its time. And for me, really crucial to maintaining planetary health and to the importance of bioregionalism. There are other organizations, the UK-based organization Bioregional Development Group, that has developed a whole system of how do we create one planet living through new forms of development that integrate into the bioregional scale. We could go into a lot of detail here, but the key point here is that we have, if we want to maintain health, if we understand complex dynamic systems are fundamentally unpredictable and uncontrollable, that we are participating in them. And so we have to make decisions, even if we don't know what our outcomes are, what the outcomes of them will be exactly. Doing things at a scale where we have quicker feedback loops and understand whether we're actually succeeding in regenerating and nurturing health makes sense. And so by creating too planetary or like global a system or too national a system, we often miss the all-important biocultural uniqueness of place that can inform truly regenerative solutions. And so also in the terms of with the way we think in economic terms, we often have a clash between the local and the global. And the bioregional scale can be the place where those two can actually come together in a global, local manner. That graphic says the same thing in a different way, that basically rather than having the local and the national or global as a clashing force, we can build on the potential dynamism between those two polarities and create solutions that are bioregional and win-win-win solutions. Also, I like this, there's a great book by Horst Brunkhorst called Bioregional Resource Management, which is quite old now, but this is a useful definition that shows why bioregionalism is so important at this point where we're facing such complex converging crises, wicked problems that don't have single solutions, that have only a kind of scale at which we can navigate into an uncertain future, trying to increase our local resilience, our capability to respond to change, rather than to create fixed systems. That's another key element of shifting from conventional sustainability approach to the regenerative approach, that it's much more focused on process and capacity building, on building the evolutionary capacity of people in place to keep responding and nurturing their local system into an uncertain future, or a future that we can't fully predict and control. It's also the way that we can begin to integrate social, ecological, and economic and cultural issues into a unique expression of place, rather than something that we sort of impose on place. Just some examples from each one of these areas. Again, as you embark with this wonderful alliance that you've built on the journey of strengthening bioregional resilience, I would have to take a look at the center that Isabel Carlisle set up near Totnes in Devon to basically create a Southern Dart region bioregional center, and she called it the Bioregional Learning Center. And they've been very good at taking a very diverse approach. On the one hand, partnering with Kate Rayworth and looking at what does the donut look like, donut economics look like for our bioregion. They've also brought local actors around the watershed and water management plans together to engage more actors around local agencies around a bioregional focus. But they've also got into the whole narrative and storytelling of reconnecting people back to the ancient lore of the land to create a story of place again, out of which bioregional initiatives can flourish. In the economic sphere, I've already mentioned Kate Rayworth's work, and she just recently last year launched the Donut Economic Action Lab, and for the last few years has been working with cities with a program that she calls Thriving Places. And these four basic questions: what would it mean for people of this city, or read bioregion, to thrive? What would it mean for this bioregion to thrive within natural habitats? What would it mean for the city to respect the well-being of people worldwide, or the bioregion to respect the well-being of people worldwide? And what would it mean for the bioregion to respect the health of the whole planet? These are some core questions around which they've created a facilitation process to help people build a donut footprint of their region and basically navigate towards bioregional regeneration. Another really fascinating framework that is trying to not offer a copy-paste best practice example, let's apply it here, which is not regenerative, but a process that people can use and adapt, and a language that they can adapt for their local area and their work, is the work of Willem Verweder through the Common Land Foundation in the Netherlands, which is basically focused on what the UN has just started a big decade on. We're just starting the UN Decade for Ecosystems Restoration. And of course, there's a very close link for between bioregional regeneration, ecosystems restoration, planetary health, and local resilience building in the face of climate change. And what Willem has done is create a language based on this concept of 4 returns and 3 landscapes, and also the daring opening up the time horizons to fit ecological systems rather than human economic systems, of saying, when we come into a region to do large-scale ecosystems restoration, it will take 20 years. There's no point in pretending anything else. And then you first bring back the vision, the return of inspiration, and through that you build alliances, which you've already started, to build social capital. And you rally around local farming, regenerative farming, and ecosystems restoration. And in doing so, as you build natural capital, you build the regional, bioregional economies, food economies, local food economies, and local food sovereignty that then regenerates financial capital in the region. And I highly recommend looking at their website, because it's full of very useful tools, and they want to support people for this in this kind of initiatives. Another resource in terms of society is this, like I've mentioned, Geddes, and how Geddes saw cities. He's the father of town planning, and unfortunately town planning went away since then. But as we still have this persistent storyline that so much of humanity will live in cities in the future, I think things will change after the pandemic, as people are starting to see how uncomfortable city living can be. So we're already seeing, at least here in Europe, moving back into the countryside, and also through remote working that has now been necessary in the pandemic. I think it will be much easier to create rural living with close link into the next bioregional city. And it will create an opportunity for us to really bring cities back into their region, which is also a very political issue, because a lot of what happened in political terms in your country in the last years was because of the divide that had been created between cities and a disenfranchised rural population that was disgruntled. And so bioregional approach might actually help the healing of that huge rift that is so necessary to heal in your country, from my humble perspective from the outside. Another way that I wanted to share of framing this, because sometimes when we speak of these new transformative visions of going towards a regenerative bioregion for Ohio, people get reactive against visionaries from this, oh, that's not very practical right now. And this framework that is also in my book, that was developed by an International Futures Forum colleague of mine, Bill Sharp, the 3 Horizons framework, allows these different ways of looking at the future to come into the presence of and into a conversation. It acknowledges that the current system is not fit for purpose, that's the red line, but it will take time for that system to be hospiced out of existence, and that the viable bioregional system that we need to create to refit humanity into the larger scale linking panarchy of the planetary ecosystem is something that takes time. And by introducing this turbulent transition zone of the second horizon, where it invites disruptive innovation and looking at innovation from this 2 perspectives of saying, does this help to build up the old system or keep it going for longer? Or is it actually already a stepping stone to building the new system? It allows for a more creative dialogue towards these 3 very different perspectives on the future. The perspective of the manager or the responsible politician in power, which is the Horizon 1, the perspective of the visionary who understands that we need to refit humanity into biological systems if we want to have a future as a species in a climate emergency. And then the entrepreneurial place in the middle, where people say, like, look, we can already do this, and it's bringing us closer to this future. And so in that middle space, we can always have this wonderful way of looking both ways and saying, is this really midwifing the new, right? And how do we actively hospice the old? But the red line doesn't disappear. So it also invites us to say what's important of the old system that we want to bring into the new system. And the green line is already here in the present. So it's looking towards the original custodians of your land that are still living bioregional patterns, and other people that are already building bioregional resilience, which you've already done through the alliance that you formed. And this is just very quickly a way of how we work with these three horizons. And I'm just going to, in the interest of time, take you through this. But it's basically one participatory process that you could run on the future of the Ohio, the wider watershed that you're in, is to just bring people together around this map and ask these questions of what is not fitting with the current system anymore? How do we bring new things into existence? What do we need to stop right now or rein in? What kind of things need to be encouraged? What certain things of the old system do we actually want to continue in order to maintain the systemic resilience? Anyway, I'll leave you to look at that. I'll share the PowerPoint with Joe, and he can then share that with everyone. This is, again, I don't have a lot of time to go into this, but if you look up h3uni.org, there are a series of very useful participatory technologies that help people to transform systems. It's a group of people that have worked with the International Futures Forum for years and then created this online resource of how to work with these tools. And one of the tools is this, what's called the World Systems Mandala, that allows us to talk about the complexity that we're now faced with at a regional, local, and a global scale. And all these elements, these 12 nodes, need to be integrated to create a viable system. But the structure of this map is such that it can be applied locally, regionally, nationally, and globally. And it allows us to, again, bring a more systemic understanding of what we're actually working with into the room. And then Ethan Miller, an Australian academic, created this wonderful graphic that I reproduced for my book, Designing Regenerative Cultures. And again, it's just naming things that you're all familiar with, but how do we create solidarity economy at the local and regional scale? And we already have so many key ingredients here, from local currency to fair trade to local cooperatives to land trusts to working with the commons, bringing the commons back into existence. And all those aspects are, for me, part of the wider strategy of bioregional regeneration. And for the academics among you working in environmental science, the entire depth of research in the Resilience Alliance, from the adaptive cycle to the panarchy and the dynamic of socio-ecological systems, also clearly shows that the bioregion is the forgotten region that is so important because it links the local to the global. And so again, there's a lot of scope there. And also I find the adaptive cycle is a way of making people feel more comfortable with the collapse and breakdown of structures that currently no longer serve, that we see around us in so many different ways. Because the adaptive cycle is a sort of condensation of the change process in ecosystems, and it shows that the disruption of the system, the breakdown of structures that have become too rigid, is actually part of preparing the system for a reorganization that allows for innovation to happen and health to continue.
Kenyon, you have about 10 minutes left.
Okay, wonderful. That's actually, I got there faster than I wanted to. But that's good, because this allows me to speak to one aspect that I think is really relevant to this alliance that you've built, which I think, as a kind of recovering academic that stepped out of academia because I was disheartened by the amount of disconnection between the disciplines and the politics. I really feel that the way that universities can redeem themselves and come out of the ivory tower and bring the unique contributions that have been developed in all these different academic disciplinary silos back into society and gifted back to society is through a process of universities becoming bioregional learning and innovation centers, where there's a conscious investment by the university to say, we want each department to take the powerful lens of your discipline and guide that lens towards what we can learn about our bioregion. And then work with other peoples in other departments and work with the designers and the linguists to find ways of communicating this knowledge that isn't in p-values and obscure academic papers, but actually in local art exhibitions, in the local newspaper, in presentations to the local school, public art installations of walking through the history of a place. There are wonderful ways of bringing both the arts and the humanities and their gifts back to making people fall in love with the place they inhabit again. And I think that's the role of the university now, not just falling in love, but also having the scientific background to understanding the species and the unique ecosystems and the water cycle and problems with local agriculture and so on. But another key shift from working on sustainability, which is this, just like the SDGs, which are a good platform of conversation and we shouldn't dismiss them. And I've created a set of cards, which are called the SDG flashcards through Gaia Education, that can help people to, again, facilitate community participatory conversation processes around how to ground the SDGs in a locality, in a place, and in a bioregion. And the way I've written the cards is actually writing into them the slight critiques I have on the SDGs, including the large critique I have on SDG 8, which I won't go into right now, but also bringing them into a more regenerative, question-focused, bioregionally focused way. And so there are 200 questions on these cards, 3 cards for each of the SDGs, that you can facilitate a very easy process in small groups, in a meeting or online, around how do we ground the 17 SDGs in our locality and how do we create projects for that. Anyway, that just as a sideline, but we have this unique opportunity to bring the universities into this conversation of what would it mean to innovate local or regional production for regional consumption based on the uniqueness of our local ecosystems in a way that we grow our local resources regeneratively, and we value the farmers again as not producers of food only, but also as custodians of local ecosystems' health, and potentially as producers of local biomaterials that allow us to diversify our local economy, create new employment around new products that are currently shipped in from the other side of the planet. And I think that will be, in so many ways, where the future is moving, that we address this overbalancing towards a globalized material culture by bringing also our production and consumption back into the bioregional scale, not 100%, but much more than we have right now, to build local food sovereignty, water sovereignty, and energy sovereignty. And again, this is just a whole number of organizations globally that are working on both ecosystems restoration at landscape scale and bioregionalism, and they're all potential alliances, allies in doing this work, because ultimately it is about staying within planetary boundaries and building at the bioregional scale the socioeconomic foundations for people to be able to do that. And we're doing it because we're heading towards the perfect storm between energy, water, and food in a world and climate crisis, where we're needing to prepare for 2-3 pretty bumpy decades. But if we take the bioregional path, we can take a drawdown path of carbon dioxide through local ecosystems regeneration and actually begin to restabilize global climate patterns. And to say that the last thing here, to show that this is already happening all over the planet, I really encourage you to, at some point, when you were just normally about to go on whatever, Netflix, to not go onto Netflix and just click on regen.earth, because this Google map, each individual marker takes you to a documentary or like a website where there's a documentary about a regeneration project in that locality around the globe. And if you need a little bit of positive hope for the future of humanity, that page is full of it. So thanks so much. I rattled through this rather fast, but we didn't have that much time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Daniel. Incredible work. One thing that struck me when I read your book a few years ago is every page you ask us a new question that we have to explore both internally and then with those who we work with and those who we know in our communities. And I feel that way about this presentation as well. And I've gotten some wonderful messages in the chat. This presentation is recorded, so this will be available next week on YouTube. And so I invite you to rewatch this again and again and again and explore these questions. But very fortunately, we still will have Daniel on for for the remainder of the program. And also fortunately, we have each other to discuss and to review some of the key points that he shared. So we are going to move into our first set of breakout groups. And I'm going to just put up on the screen here. So check out the screen. During the registration process, you signed up for one of these 6 different groups. In each of those sessions will be 2 expert facilitators as listed on the screen. And they will be guiding you through a series of conversations and prompts. So I hope that you enjoy those conversations, and we will send a note around about 10:53 or so to bring it back to continue the conversation with Daniel Wahl.
Molly, is David or a relation of you? Yeah?
Yeah, he's my grandfather.
Oh, give him my love, please. Please do tell him how much he's influenced me, and yeah, I'm following his mentorship still.
Me too.
Great. Oops, nice to meet you.
What an incredible connection. Thank you. And thanks to everyone for those conversations that you had. I do want to ask a couple questions that were shared during Daniel's initial presentation, and a few of them overlap. And the first one I'm going to read, I think captures a couple individuals' questions, which is, communication within and between institutions can be challenging, yet it seems to be increasingly necessary to address environmental challenges on various scales. How do you recommend, Daniel, institutions improve internal and external communication to address environmental challenges?
I was trying to allude to that. I don't know if I did in the presentation, that one of the key reframes of working regeneratively is to do a little bit of linguistic aikido or reframing with this tendency that we have to work on problems. Because the minute you work on problems, you're trying to abstract something to have a sort of abstract notion of the problem that happens everywhere around the planet, and then you try to find solutions that you can then apply everywhere on the planet. But when you work with potential, you work with uniqueness. And that's at the heart of regeneration, at the personal, at the community or the team level, and at the bioregional level. Only when we work with a specific place, suddenly all these problems fall into a sort of cluster where we see the potential of addressing all of them at once. Like in another way, I remember the guy who wrote the book on the blue economy, Gunther Pauli, he tends to, when people talk about problems, he says, don't talk about 1, 2, or 3 problems, give me 10, 15, 20, but just use them as an awareness that these are issues that we need to address. But what's the potential in this place to flourish is a very different approach that still addresses these issues, but not in that trap that leads us to abstraction, but in a way that actually works with the uniqueness of the local ecosystem and the uniqueness of the local culture. And that changes the communication. It's much more inviting for people to work on potential rather than problems.
So building on that, what advice do you have specifically to those that are in universities?
Well, I think this notion of how can we give back to society through the power of our disciplinary lens and take the disciplinary lens onto helping people understand their region better, helping people to know it better, but also in the Jungian sense, not stay too much in just the thinking, as Jung spoke of 4 ways of knowing that we have. And academia is stuck with the analytical, the rational. But sensing, feeling, and intuiting is actually what changes culture. It's what touches people in the heart. So we need to take the lens of academia and bring it back into the sensing, feeling, and intuiting about understanding our region. And through art, through music, through dance, through every cultural expression, we need to communicate we are expressions of this place and celebrate the uniqueness of the place and the need to be good custodians of it.
Thank you. There was a question asked specific to the issue of migration, of human migration. How do bioregionalists think about the issue of migration, which attributed to climate change is likely to increase for decades ahead?
Human migration or species migration or both?
Actually, it just says migration. I implied human, but this could be species.
Well, but I mean, basically, it gives me an opportunity to speak to something else, because I know that there's a lot of preservationists and conservationists on the call. I don't like the framing of the Anthropocene. I much prefer the Symbiocene or the Ecocene, Thomas Berry's term. But we're in a time now where we affect ecosystems everywhere. And what we've triggered is unstoppable in the sense of all ecosystems are in flux. Temperatures are rising, which means that distributions of certain species are changing, which means that pollinators and pollinated are moving apart. So the whole notion of conserving or preserving an ecosystem is a bit like trying to freeze a waterfall in rainy season. We need to get into understanding ecosystems in a more dynamic way, learn from the wonderful work in the Resilience Alliance that has for 40 years tried to understand these change dynamics. And if we really work with socio-ecological systems, there is no difference between what I just asked, human migration or ecological migration. It's fine. It's bringing more diversity into the system, which ultimately we've learned in life is the source of all creativity. The evolutionary process is driven by diversity. So I think that the biggest danger of the bioregional movement right now that we have to be aware of is that it can be easily hijacked by right-wing lifeboaters and preppers into a sort of understanding of us against them. Let's just shore up the bioregion and protect ourselves in a world and climate chaos. That's not the bioregionalism I'm talking about. I'm talking about healing the planet place by place. And I've seen this in many places that when you start a regional conversation, you will get some of the prepper types come into the conversation. And I would be really careful with that.
Thank you. I just want to say that we have about 5 minutes remaining in the Q&A with Daniel. So if you have additional questions, feel free to post them in the chat or even unmute and go ahead and ask. Joey, I think I see you ready to ask.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Daniel. Every time I read or I see you speaking, I feel like I'm in a very rich masterclass. So I thank you for sharing all of your information. And still, getting to the conversation, can you guide us, or have you written or shared that I missed the language? You're talking about a language that is so important for us to transition to. You talk about custodian rather than leader. When we've been so accustomed, even at the universities, to have leadership studies instead of stewardship studies. And I think those transitions are very important. Could you also guide us in, if you've run across that, or have you written this already?
Well, I have, if you put my name and then the word medium, which is just this aggregator block called Medium, into a search engine, my blog on Medium will pop up. Or I've actually put a couple of links in the chat box, and there are about 560 pieces on there, my book and individual pieces. And so I think that we must understand the importance of languaging and the mimetic frames we use, and really watch out whether we use organismic or mechanistic metaphors as we speak about all of this, and in so many different ways. And it's a constant practice, because I'm still making a lot of mistakes in the language I use. But particularly in terms of the focus on bioregion, the second link that I sent a bit earlier up in the chat, no, the first one, which is called Bioregional Regeneration for Planetary Health. That actually at the end of it has a sort of summary of all the pieces of writing that I've done in the last few years, and even long before, on bioregionalism. So I hope that helps. And also my book speaks a lot about these different frames. It's distilling the wisdom that I've received from my mentors and trying to share it to people. It's not my stuff. I'm just a conduit.
Thanks for the question, Joey. Anyone else? We have a time for one more question for Daniel.
I'll ask a question if no one else has it. Dr. Wahl, greatly enjoyed your talk. I'm a biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service for the past 13 years, and I work sort of on that edge of built environment, natural environment. But I'm always disappointed to see, the STEM schools and university programs don't really focus on that, and focus on building robots and things like that. I always try to tell the students, you can build robots to do things towards the types of ends that you're talking about, and that this can be inserted into any field, really. But how do you get the political leaders, if you want to call them leaders, involved, and to get on board and out of the me, my money right now power kind of conversation?
This is a link to a website of an organization that has been born out of a process that I've been part of since 2016. It was started by the Commonwealth Secretariat, which is this organization that brings together 54 nations of a somewhat dubious past. They were all former British colonies, but trying to build on the potential of their common history now rather than the hurt. And they have already taken regenerative development and the bioregional focus into the core of their policy making. So that's just one way of, when you try to speak to a politician and they kind of look at you like, who are you and why should I talk to you? And on that topic, you can say, well, there are 54 nations already talking about this topic, so maybe you should get on board, and rather than it just positions it differently. You can refer to Costa Rica, who's working on a regenerative development national roadmap. Again, understanding that the implementation is bioregional in nature. And the same, the New Zealand government is starting to take that on. So those are, I always find it helpful. That's why I also brought in the Capital Institute and the Planetary Health Alliance. It's not that everybody in the Planetary Health Alliance is a kind of dyed-in-the-wool bioregionalist, but they have communicated bioregional scale as the locus of focus for healing ecosystems and the bridge to planetary health. And that then gives you a very different entry point when talking to policymakers or politicians, because you can talk particularly now about this critical link after the pandemic of how do we build. And then the other key entry point, of course, is food sovereignty, water sovereignty, energy sovereignty. Like the wonderful work that Pioneers did a few years ago in Dreaming New Mexico. That was it's a resource that again could be adapted to run a Dreaming Ohio process on. They built a map of the local food shed, building on watershed, but looking at the food system, and then the energy system for New Mexico. But again, if you get in touch with them, the processes that they've developed could be applied to another region and build precedents that when you talk to policymakers actually give you something to start with.
Well, thank you very much. Again, the avoiding nationalism as a synonym for bioregionalism it's going to be a tricky dance, but thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Daniel, thank you so much. We so appreciate your remarks, your presentation. I can't thank you enough. I know we can maybe go around and clap at our screens or do the little emoticon for it, but that's just not enough to say thank you for being part of our bioregioning conversation today. And on that, I do want to transition over to give Dr. Terry Hermsen from Otterbein University a chance to share briefly about what ROAR is about, and then we'll talk more about what the next session is going to involve. Terry?
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Daniel, for the vision that you've just handed us. This is the vision we've been struggling to kind of put together for so long, and all these resources that you've laid out, and your own work and your own thinking are, I think, the guide to what comes next. So for all of you out there, thank you for coming. And don't think this is the end. This is actually a beginning of what ROAR and our collective colleges want to make happen. So if you're interested in that, we will follow up with an invitation to maybe some future webinars, but actually work on the ground. So I'm Terry Hermsen, and I'm a kind of the unofficial, I'm not a leader, just a coordinator for ROAR, which is a very unofficial organization in and of itself. But I want to thank Joe and Cecil for helping put this together, and our ROAR Academy team. We put a ton into this. I want to thank the Environmental Professionals Network people for being here. We hope to make this really work for you so that the connections you make with our ROAR Academy will build toward the kind of future Daniel was talking about. And thanks to the interns who are here, who we'll be working with over the next 8 weeks for your commitment to being part of this. Okay, so what's ROAR and what's the ROAR Academy? Maybe that would help. ROAR stands for Regional Ohio Action for Resilience. We've held 4 summits over the last 3 years, starting with one with David Orr at Stratford Ecological Center, where we started to get this going. And now I think Daniel's handed us the vision of how we can get this going. We're not official in any way. We're not a 501c3. We do not even have a board of directors. We're just an idea. And the idea is actually maybe threefold. One, we've got this crisis in front of us that we all know and that we're all going to have to work on radically. Secondly, there are tons of people in the Central Ohio bioregion, especially the area outside of Columbus, in Columbus and Franklin County for sure, but in Delaware County, Licking County, Knox County, Marion County, who are doing things on these very needs, but frequently we don't know each other and we aren't working across our campuses. We're starting to, but that's the goal of ROAR, is to just make links. And thirdly, we believe that we need to do this bioregionally. We need to, yeah, sure, work in our individual towns or individual colleges, but unless we build this vision, we won't get anywhere near what Daniel was offering to us. So what do? We just basically put one person together with somebody else. I go to Joe Campbell, we go to Joe Campbell and say, hey, we want to put this ROAR Academy together. And he says, well, why don't we invite Daniel Wahl to talk about his bigger vision? And I'm saying, okay, Joe, that's a great idea. And that's how these things happen. I'll give you a smaller example. We go to a middle school teacher at Olentangy Orange Middle School who is perfectly willing to plant 400 trees with his students for Last Earth Day, but has no idea that Green Columbus has a huge number of native hardwood seedlings that they're ready to give away. So once we connect Green Columbus with Olentangy Middle School, he's got 600 kids. He's got the principal on board, the athletic department, the facilities people, and all of his fellow teachers to get 600 kids out there to plant those 400 trees in 2 days. However, that raises other issues, as why do the grounds people want to plant all the trees individually rather than we could have planted 1,800 trees in a forest-like environment and in 10 years have a forest. But no, the grounds people have to mow around every single tree. So I'm saying and so this fall, we're going to be working with that teacher and other teachers in the Olentangy school system to say, can we go beyond this mowing grass concept? That's going to be hard work. It's small, but it's part of what we do. On a bigger level, we're putting together something we've called the Higher Education Collaborative, which has 5 to 7 colleges that we're combining together, faculty in those and administration. So we're trying to work on food system aggregation and buy local food collaboratively so that we support the farmers that Daniel mentioned a little while ago in a more direct way. That vision is still developing, but we're meeting monthly to help it come to life. Same way, we're meeting with these same colleges and the facilities directors, the CFOs, on trying to aggregate our buying power for Ohio produced renewable energy. And so we're connecting Smart Columbus, which has an incredible plan on how colleges can move to 100% renewable with no upfront cost and no increased debt, which sounds like a great idea. But of course, the CFOs of the colleges had no idea this was possible. So we're holding these conversations. That's all that ROAR does, is say, hey, CFO at Otterbein, can you talk to Zach McGuire at Smart Columbus and build toward that? It's not going to be easy, but that's the kind of thing we do. So it's kind of tricky work. It's not underhanded. I think we're trying to work behind the scenes to make these happen. Finally, although there's other things, we're trying to aggregate our learning. That's to think across our campuses. Can courses be connected? Can faculty be connected from one? They're doing research over, at Denison on a particular issue, or at Kenyon College. Can we make links? That's our goal over the next few years. And our first such curricular exchange is launched today. You are all unwittingly part of what we're launching as the ROAR Academy, which is 12 to 14 student interns at 4 colleges, Kenyon, Otterbein, MTSO, and Denison, that are going to be in communication with each other over the course of the summer for the next 8 weeks, studying Daniel's work, going to these websites you've mentioned, communicating their experiences, doing the 3 sisters planting at Kenyon and the community garden at Otterbein, and we'll get them together and we'll connect them to mentors, hopefully in the EPN network, so that instead of seeing their work in isolation, they're seeing their work as bioregionally. And we're hoping that they will provide the wedge to get their faculty, to all the faculty in the colleges, to join in. It's an underhanded way of going at this. But thank you, Daniel. Thank you for all for coming. That if anybody, and we'll send out invitations on how we can follow up on what Daniel is.
Thank you. This is so exciting. Thank you. This sounds fantastic work.
So as Terry mentioned, the inaugural group of the ROAR Academy interns are here with us now. So you can see the list on the screen. We will be going back into the same groups that we were in before. Each of the interns that's listed here is associated with a topic area that's generally related to their area of interest and or the type of internship that they will have this summer. And as Terry mentioned, one component of what this academy is seeking to include is a mentorship opportunity to connect with environmental professionals. The expectation is essentially to, if you are interested in serving in the role of a mentor to a ROAR Academy intern, it's about 3 hours expected over the course of the summer, which consists of about 3 hour-long or so, just check-ins virtually or in a way that you're most comfortable with. So just some instructions there on the screen. Cecil is going to post into the chat a link to a survey that if over the course of the next 15 or 20 minutes, or as you think about it over the next day or two, if this is a program that you are interested in being a part of, just click on the link that Cecil's posting in the chat and put your name into that list. And then it'll be up to the students, the ROAR Academy interns, to follow up. But that's what we're sort of offering here going forward. So if you're all ready, I'll go back to this list here to share a little bit about what your internship's about. We're going to go ahead and move into those groups for about 10 minutes. We have almost everyone back in the room to conclude things. Just want to say again, a huge thank you, Daniel, and it means so much to have you here today. And I hope that everyone enjoyed the follow-up conversations, learning more about the ROAR Academy. It's so exciting. I'm going to paste into the chat Terry Hermsen's email contact. So if you want to learn more about ROAR, about what they're doing this summer, about ideas that they have in the future, please contact Terry. We'll send a follow-up email, Cecil and I, in the next few days with additional information to follow up on. Jeff, I'll hand it over to you.
Well, this is great. I really appreciated the opportunity to sort of be in the breakout room with everybody. I was more of a fly on the wall listening, but it's really nice to gather with our community and hear about all the fun things and cool things people are doing. And I'm so excited about the Roar Academy and sort of like where that's taking us. So thank you for everyone. And I'm in awe of sort of like everybody's commitment to sort of moving us forward. So it's optimistic. It makes me feel optimistic about the future. A special thanks to our presenter, Daniel Wahl, for so many thought-provoking concepts and sharing your breadth of knowledge with us here today, and also to Terry Hermsen for your work behind the scenes with EPN and lead up to today's program to bring the Roar Initiative to this event. As is our virtual EPN tradition, we want to recognize you with a certificate of appreciation and thanks for your participation. You, along with many environmental professionals and students who participated today, are helping us learn for life and to positively shape our world. In addition to Terry, I know there were others who are part of Roar and related organizations in Central Ohio that helped in facilitating today's session. Many thanks to your assistance and work on this. I'm so impressed by the amount of talented undergraduate students from across Central Ohio and the broader network of environmental and natural resource professionals in our community. I want to call attention to our school's graduate level programs, which might be of interest to you or those that work with you. Please check out the brief descriptions on the screen and follow up with Joe or Cecil after the program if you'd like to learn more about our graduate degree offerings. Late last year, Joshua Simon earned his Master's of Science degree from our school and was hired into a new position as Diversity and Inclusion Coordinator for the Central Ohio Metro Parks. Josh was a regular at EPN, so some of you might have met him over the years. At the start of his role, Joshua has been reaching out to community-based organizations, big and small, to build community and connect diverse groups with nature within the metro parks. Through building new relationships and strengthening existing ones, Joshua wants to be able to organize community events, increase nature programming activities, explore nature-based career pathways, and offer other activities that build racial equity, diversity, inclusion in Central Ohio. Join Joshua Simon on July 13th for a conversation on his progress working with youth and recently developed partnerships to increase community engagement opportunities. For those of you working in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I really encourage you to sort of like either participate in this program or reach out to Josh and learn more. He's a real force, and I think that great things are going to come out of this. The EPN team is also excited to welcome back Nicole Jackson to help facilitate this conversation. Cecil is posting details about this program in the chat now. Please consider registering today to learn from Joshua and to participate in a brief follow-up networking event on these topics. The last item to share today is a plug for anyone who, like me, have rising or current high school students at home and interested in a very fun and exciting summer camp experience. Camp Canopy is an excellent adventure experience to learn about forestry and wildlife. Check out the website featured on the screen if you would like more details. Registration is still open. Thank you again to Daniel and to everyone for your participation today. Let us continue to build our collective wisdom as we restore and regenerate ecosystems here in Central Ohio and regions beyond. Have a great day and have a great summer, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Yes.